I stood in our master bathroom, staring at my wife's phone as it lit up with a text message from Travis. Last night was incredible. Can't wait for Austin next week. The timestamp, 3:47 a.m. That's when I knew 19 years of marriage were about to end, not with tears or screams, but with cold, calculated precision. My name is Mark Henley. I'm 48, a systems analyst for a cybersecurity firm, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I was in a mostly happy marriage with Jenna. We met in college, built a life in Virginia Beach, no kids by mutual choice. We had our routines, our compromises, our quiet understanding, or so I believed. I didn't immediately confront her about the text. Instead, I placed her phone exactly where I'd found it, went downstairs, made coffee, and began to plan. That's what I do: analyze systems, find vulnerabilities, implement solutions. And my marriage had just revealed itself to be a system with a catastrophic security breach. The first week I watched and listened. Jenna mentioned a business trip to Austin for a pharmaceutical sales conference. Delridge Pharma was sending their top performers, and she, as senior sales manager, would be mentoring new talent, including Travis Sloan, 35, recently promoted, and apparently spending his nights texting my wife. "It's going to be intense," Jenna said over dinner, not meeting my eyes. "We've got presentations, workshops, team-building events. I probably won't have much time to call." I nodded, sipped my wine. "That's fine, I understand." She seemed almost disappointed by my lack of questions. I'd played this role for years, the understanding husband who didn't ask too many questions about her late nights, weekend workshops, or increasingly frequent business trips. The second week, I gathered intel. While Jenna was at work, I combed through our home office, checking financial records, emails she'd forgotten to log out of, text messages synchronized to our shared iPad. The evidence piled up. Dinner reservations for 2 at restaurants she never mentioned visiting, hotel charges in cities where she claimed to be staying with colleagues, and increasingly intimate conversations with Travis. One night, as I pretended to sleep, I heard her in our ensuite bathroom, speakerphone on low. "If only you weren't married," Jenna whispered. Travis's voice came through clearly. "I know. Karen and I haven't connected in years. It's just paperwork at this point." "We have to be careful at the conference," Jenna said. "People talk." "We'll find our moments," Travis replied. "We always do." I lay there, heart hammering but mind cold and clear. I realized something profound in that moment. I wasn't heartbroken. I was angry, yes, but more than that, I was relieved. As if I'd finally found the answer to a problem I'd been trying to solve for years. The third week, I called Marcus Vail. We'd been friends since elementary school, and he'd become one of Virginia Beach's most sought-after divorce attorneys. His specialty? What he called clean breaks. Divorces executed so precisely the other party barely knew what hit them until it was too late. "You're sure about this?" Marcus asked as we sat in his office, the ocean visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. "Completely," I replied, sliding a USB drive across his desk. "Everything's here. Financial records, text messages, hotel receipts. She's been sleeping with her subordinate for at least 6 months." Marcus whistled low. "And she's his direct supervisor? At Delridge?" I nodded. "She personally approved his promotion last quarter." "That's against their corporate policy, isn't it?" "Something about disclosure of relationships?" "Zero tolerance," I confirmed. "She's bragged about how strictly they enforce it, especially with the power imbalance." Marcus leaned back in his chair, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Then we have leverage, not just for the divorce, but for everything else." "I want it all, Marcus. The house, the investments, everything." "Normally I'd say that's ambitious. But with this," he tapped the USB drive, "we might just pull it off." We spent the next 2 hours outlining a strategy so meticulous it would make a military general proud. By the time I left his office, I had a beige folder containing preliminary divorce papers and a step-by-step plan that would leave Jenna with nothing but regrets. That Saturday morning, as Jenna began her weekend at the Austin conference, I was up early. The morning sun sparkled off the sprinkler as I watered our immaculate lawn. Out of habit, I checked Facebook on my phone, and there it was, a post from Jenna uploaded just an hour earlier. She and Travis pressed close together at what looked like a hotel bar, cocktails in hand. Her head rested against his shoulder, her smile wider and more genuine than any she'd given me in years. The caption read, "My real partner." 26 people had already liked it. Colleagues, friends, even her sister Angela, who'd been to our house for dinner just last month, sitting across from me at our dining table while secretly knowing, perhaps, that her sister was cheating on me. I didn't throw my phone. I didn't curse. I simply walked inside, set my phone on the counter, and retrieved the beige folder from my home office. Back in the kitchen, I placed it squarely in the center of our island counter, the granite countertop Jenna had insisted we needed when we renovated 3 years ago. Then I picked up my phone and commented on her post. "Congratulations, divorce papers on the kitchen table." I turned off notifications, slipped the phone into my pocket, and went back outside to finish watering the lawn. By noon, my phone was exploding with calls and texts from Jenna, from her friends, even from her mother. I ignored them all and drove to my sister Elaine's house across town. "You actually did it," Elaine said as she handed me a beer on her back deck. At 50, my sister had survived 2 divorces of her own and had developed a philosopher's perspective on marriage. "I'm proud of you, Mark." "For what? Failing at my marriage?" "For refusing to be a doormat another day." She clinked her bottle against mine. "I've watched you shrink year after year with her, becoming smaller, quieter, more invisible. It hurt to see." I stared out at her garden. The riot of summer bloomed so different from the manicured precision of my own yard. Was it that obvious? To me, yes. Remember when you stopped playing guitar? When you gave up those weekend photography trips? When you started checking with her before making any plans with me or Mom? Elaine took a long sip. "You've been disappearing for years, Mark. Maybe now you can come back." I stayed at Elaine's that night, sleeping in her guest room like a refugee. In the morning, I executed the next phase of the plan. First, I sent an anonymous email to Delridge Pharma's HR department. Subject line, "Ethics violation by senior management." I attached screenshots of Jenna's Facebook post, a calendar showing she was at a company-paid conference, and documentation of her supervisory role over Travis. I added copies of text messages I'd found proving their relationship predated his promotion, which she had personally championed. Next, I contacted our bank and investment firms. As the primary account holder with better credit, I removed Jenna's access to our joint accounts and credit cards, leaving her with only her personal checking account and credit card, which I knew carried a balance near its limit due to her penchant for designer clothes. I transferred my 401k into a trust with Elaine as beneficiary, a temporary move Marcus assured me was legal as long as I transferred it back after the divorce was finalized. Then I called Don Acker, a former colleague of Jenna's who'd been pushed out of Delridge last year during a reorganization that Jenna had orchestrated. Don had been bitter enough to reach out to me afterward, hinting that he knew things about my wife that would make my head spin. I'd ignored him then. Now I invited him for coffee. "I always liked you, Mark," Don said as we sat at a corner table in a cafe far from our usual haunts. "That's why I didn't tell you everything last year. But she screwed me over, man. Promised I'd be safe in the reorganization right up until the day she had security walk me out." "And now?" I asked. Don smiled thinly. "Now I still have friends at Delridge, friends who tell me things, friends who might text me if, say, a certain HR investigation gets opened." "Would you tell me if that happened?" "Buddy, I'd tell you what color underwear the HR director was wearing when he read the complaint." Don leaned forward. "Jenna made a lot of enemies on her way up. People are just waiting for her to fall." By Sunday evening, I was back home, implementing the final preparations. I boxed up Jenna's clothes, jewelry, and personal items, leaving only the barest essentials. I loaded the boxes into my SUV and drove them to a storage unit I'd rented under Elaine's name. I paid for 3 months in advance and texted the location and access code to Jenna's personal email. On Monday morning, I called a locksmith and had all the locks changed. I removed Jenna's house key from her keyring, which she'd left in her jewelry box, and left it on the kitchen counter beside the divorce papers. At 2:17 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Don. "Broke down. They opened a case. HR is already digging. Director called emergency meeting with legal. Everything was proceeding exactly as Marcus had predicted. I felt a cold satisfaction as I imagined the dominoes falling one by one. On Tuesday afternoon, as I worked from home, Don called rather than texted. "You're not going to believe this," he said, his voice vibrating with suppressed glee. "They pulled her and Travis into separate conference rooms this morning. Full formal inquiry, witnesses, documentation, the works. And they found messages on their company phones. Explicit stuff, man. Plus evidence they were using company funds for their little rendezvous, charging extra nights at conference hotels, meals, even goddamn in-room movies." Don laughed. "She's toast, Mark. Absolutely toast." "Keep me posted," I said, feeling strangely hollow despite getting exactly what I wanted. "Will do. Oh, and Mark, whatever you paid that lawyer of yours, double it. This is the cleanest execution I've ever seen." Jenna was supposed to return from Austin on Wednesday evening. I knew her schedule by heart. United Airlines Flight 1422, arriving at Norfolk at 8:35 p.m. I'd normally pick her up, waiting at baggage claim with that artificial husband smile while she pretended her business trip had been all business. Not this time. At 6:48 p.m., my doorbell rang. I checked the security camera on my phone and saw Jenna standing on our porch, 2 large suitcases beside her. She'd come home a day early, probably hoping to catch me off guard. I took my time walking to the door. When I opened it, the look on her face almost made me pity her. Almost. "My key doesn't work," she said, confusion and the first flickers of fear crossing her face. I leaned against the door frame, blocking the entrance. "I didn't change the lock, Jenna. I changed my life." She blinked, mascara already smudging beneath her eyes. "What are you talking about? And why did you write that ridiculous comment on my Facebook post? Do you know how embarrassing that was? More or less embarrassing than fucking your subordinate at a company event and posting about it publicly?" Her face went white, then red. It was a joke, Mark. Office humor." "Save it," I said, my voice flat. "Your clothes and personal items are in a storage unit." I handed her a slip of paper with the address and code. "You can stay in the guest room tonight. Your company toiletries are in there. Tomorrow you find somewhere else to live." "You can't just throw me out. This is my house too." "Actually, it's not. Check the deed. Check the mortgage. My name only, remember? You didn't want the liability when you took the job at Delridge. Too much exposure in case of lawsuits, you said." She stared at me, mouth opening and closing like a landed fish. I could almost see her mind racing, recalculating, looking for leverage. "The guest room," I repeated, stepping aside to let her in. "One night, then you're gone." She moved past me into the house, the familiar scent of her perfume now turning my stomach. I carried her suitcases in and placed them at the foot of the stairs. "There's a document on the bed," I said, "a complete accounting of our assets, liabilities, and my proposed division. Spoiler alert, you get your clothes, your car, and whatever is in your personal accounts. I get everything else." "That's insane," she whispered. No court would what? Look kindly on a senior manager having an affair with her direct report? Using company resources to fund their trysts? Violating explicit corporate policies that she herself has enforced against others? I smiled thinly. "You're right. No court would look kindly on that at all." I turned and walked toward the kitchen. "I'm ordering pizza. Don't expect me to get enough for you." I slept soundly that night, which surprised me. I'd expected to lie awake, replaying conversations or questioning my decisions. Instead, I drifted off almost immediately and woke feeling more rested than I had in months. At 7:30 a.m., I heard Jenna's alarm through the guest room wall. By 7:45, she was in the kitchen where I sat drinking coffee and reading news on my tablet. "We need to talk about this," she said, holding the financial document I'd left for her. Her hair was pulled back severely, her face scrubbed of makeup. She'd put on her power suit, charcoal gray with a crisp white blouse, her armor for difficult conversations. "There's nothing to discuss," I replied without looking up. "Those are the terms. Take them or we go to court, where I'll subpoena every record from Delridge and call every colleague who's ever seen you with Travis. You don't understand what you're doing, she said, her voice taking on that condescending tone I'd grown to hate. This vindictive stunt could damage both our futures. We need to be rational. I finally looked up at her. Rational? Like secretly fucking your subordinate for months while lying to my face? That kind of rational? It wasn't like that, she insisted, color rising in her cheeks. Travis and I, it just happened. We connected intellectually first. You and I haven't connected in years, Mark. You've been so distant, so uninvolved in my life. I laughed, a harsh sound that seemed to startle her. That's rich, Jenna, really rich. I stopped trying to be involved when you made it clear my involvement was an inconvenience. When you started scheduling calls during our dinner time. When you began criticizing my every attempt to connect. That's not fair. None of this is fair. I cut her off. But it is what it is. Sign the papers, take the deal, and move on. Isn't that what you've been trying to do anyway? Move on? Her phone rang before she could respond. She glanced at it, and I saw fear flash across her face. You should answer that, I said. Might be important. Her hand trembled slightly as she accepted the call. This is Jenna Henley. I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but I didn't need to. I watched as Jenna's professional facade crumbled, word by word. Her shoulders tensed, then slumped. Her eyes widened, then closed. Her free hand gripped the counter so hard her knuckles turned white. Yes, I understand, she finally said, her voice barely audible. I'll be there at 10. She ended the call and looked at me with naked panic. What did you do? I didn't do anything, I replied calmly. You did this, all of it. They want me in HR at 10, with representation if I want it. Her breathing grew rapid and shallow. Did you report me? Did you send them those pictures? I sipped my coffee. Would it matter if I did? The pictures exist. The relationship exists. The violation of company policy exists. Who reported it changes nothing. She stared at me for a long moment, and for the first time since I'd known her, Jenna looked genuinely afraid. Not manipulatively afraid, not tactically afraid, but deeply, existentially afraid. You've ruined me, she whispered. No, I corrected her. You ruined you. I'm just refusing to be collateral damage. She left for Delridge at 9:15, back straight, chin up, the consummate professional going to face a minor inconvenience. I almost admired her capacity for self-delusion. At 10:34, Dawn texted me. She's in conference room B with HR, legal, and Davidson. Davidson was James Davidson, the division director and Jenna's boss, the man who championed her career for years. At 11:17, still in there, security has been called. At 12:05, it's done, they walked her out, badge taken, personal items in a box, complete scorched earth. I didn't respond to any of the messages. Instead, I drove to Marcus's office for our scheduled noon appointment. Everything's proceeding as expected, Marcus said as we reviewed the latest developments. My contact at Delridge confirms she's been terminated for cause. That means no severance, possibly no unemployment, depending on how they document it. And the divorce? Marcus smiled. Judge Carolyn Brewer is handling our case. Let's just say she has strong feelings about workplace impropriety and abuse of power. With Jenna losing her job for an affair with a subordinate, we're in an excellent position. How excellent? I've never promised outcomes before, Mark. You know that's not how I operate. Marcus leaned forward. But in this case, I'm prepared to say we'll get at least 90% of what we're asking for, possibly all of it. I nodded, feeling that same hollow sensation despite the victories piling up. What happens next? We wait. Jenna will either sign the agreement as is, or she'll hire counsel and try to fight. Given the circumstances, I'm betting on the former. She needs a quick resolution more than you do right now. I left Marcus's office and drove aimlessly for a while, eventually finding myself at the ocean front. I parked and walked along the boardwalk, watching tourists and locals enjoying the summer day. Families with ice cream cones, couples holding hands, joggers with dogs. Normal people living normal lives. Had my life with Jenna ever been normal? Had there been a time when we were genuinely happy, or had it all been an elaborate performance from the beginning? I couldn't remember anymore. My phone rang. Elaine, how are you holding up? She asked without preamble. I'm fine, I said automatically. Bullshit. You've just dismantled your entire life in 3 weeks. Nobody's fine after that. I sighed, watching a seagull dive for a discarded French fry. I don't know what I am then. Numb, maybe. That's shock. It'll wear off. Then comes the grief, the anger, the doubt. I'm already angry, I interrupted, and I don't doubt what I'm doing. Not for a second. I believe you, Elaine said softly, but there's a difference between knowing you're right and feeling okay about it. Just be prepared for the feelings to hit, that's all. And when they do, call me. Anytime. I will, I promised, though we both knew I probably wouldn't. I returned home around 4:30 to find Jenna's car in the driveway. For a moment, I considered turning around, avoiding another confrontation. But this was my house, the one place I wouldn't retreat from anymore. I found her in the kitchen, still in her work clothes, though they looked considerably less crisp now. An open bottle of white wine sat on the counter, a half-empty glass beside it. They fired me, she said without looking up. Effective immediately, escorted out by security like a criminal. I heard, I replied, setting my keys on the hook by the door. Her head snapped up. You heard? How could you possibly have heard already? I shrugged. Does it matter? She studied my face, realization dawning. You planned this, all of it. The divorce papers waiting, when I posted that stupid photo, the HR complaint timed perfectly. You orchestrated my entire downfall. Give me some credit, Jenna. I couldn't have orchestrated anything if you hadn't given me so much material to work with. She took a long drink of wine. 19 years. 19 years of marriage, and you throw it away over one indiscretion. One, I laughed. We both know it wasn't just one. And we both know our marriage has been on life support for years. I just finally decided to pull the plug. What do you want from me? She asked, suddenly sounding tired. An apology? Begging? Tears? Will that satisfy whatever twisted need for revenge is driving this? I don't want anything from you, I said honestly. Not anymore. I want you to sign the papers, take the deal, and disappear from my life. That's all. She looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. Who are you? The Mark what married would never do something like this. The Mark you married doesn't exist anymore. You killed him, one small cut at a time, until there was nothing left but a ghost walking through his own life. I moved to the refrigerator and took out a beer. But thanks for that, actually, because the man who replaced him is someone I might actually learn to respect. I left her in the kitchen and went upstairs to shower and change. When I came back down an hour later, she was gone, along with her suitcases. The financial document lay on the counter, unsigned. The next morning, I had just finished breakfast when my phone rang. Marcus. She's hired counsel, he said without a greeting. Patricia Lawson from Bennett and Reed. Is that bad? It's challenging. Lawson's aggressive, theatrical, loves the media, loves a spectacle. She specializes in portraying her clients, usually women, as victims of circumstance. I felt a flicker of concern for the first time. Can she hurt our case? Not the fundamentals, no. The facts are still the facts, but she can make the process uglier, longer, more public. Are you prepared for that? I thought about it for a moment. Yes, whatever it takes, Ardamit. Good man, I'll keep you posted. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of legal maneuvers. Jenna, through her attorney, rejected our initial proposal and countered with demands that Marcus called delusional. She wanted half of everything, plus alimony, plus the house. In exchange, she offered to sign a non-disclosure agreement about the circumstances of our divorce. She's essentially trying to blackmail you, Marcus explained during one of our meetings. Pay me off or I'll make this public and embarrassing. She doesn't realize it's already public and embarrassing, I replied. She lost her job over this. Does she think that's going to stay secret in her industry? Denial is a powerful force, Marcus said, shaking his head. But Judge Brewer won't be impressed by these tactics. We stay the course. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in early August. I arrived at the courthouse 30 minutes early, freshly shaved and wearing my best suit. Navy blue, conservative, the picture of a responsible citizen. Marcus met me in the hallway outside the courtroom. Remember what we discussed. Let me do most of the talking. If the judge addresses you directly, be respectful, concise, and unemotional. No matter what Jenna or her attorney says, don't react visibly. I nodded, feeling surprisingly calm. I'm ready. We entered the courtroom and took our seats at one of the tables facing the judge's bench. A few minutes later, the door opened again, and Jenna walked in with Patricia Lawson, a tall, angular woman with silver hair and the sharpest red suit I'd ever seen. Jenna didn't look at me as they took their seats at the other table. She wore a modest black dress that made her look like a widow at a funeral. The transformation from power-suited executive to demure, wounded wife was so calculated it almost made me laugh. Judge Carolyn Brewer entered, and we all rose. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 50s, with short brown hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. She radiated no-nonsense efficiency as she called the court to order and began reviewing the case. I've read the filings from both parties, she said, looking over her glasses at each table in turn. And frankly, I'm concerned about the tone and approach being taken here, particularly by the respondent. Mrs. Henley, through counsel, has made accusations of emotional abandonment and mental cruelty without providing any specific instances or evidence. Patricia Lawson stood. Your Honor, if I may, my client has been traumatized by the sudden and vindictive actions of her husband. She found herself locked out of her home, cut off financially, and the subject of an orchestrated campaign to destroy her professional reputation, all without warning or provocation. Judge Brewer's expression remained neutral. Without provocation, counsel? Are you claiming your client did not engage in an extramarital relationship with a workplace subordinate in violation of her employer's policies? My client's personal relationships are complex and nuanced, Your Honor. The workplace policies in question are selectively enforced and often weaponized against successful women. Ms. Lawson, the judge interrupted, I didn't ask for a sociological treatise. Did your client have an affair with her subordinate, yes or no? Lawson hesitated. The nature of her relationship with Mr. Sloan is not the central issue in this divorce proceeding. I'll take that as a yes, Judge Brewer said dryly. Mr. Vale, what is your client seeking on this action? Marcus stood. Your Honor, my client seeks a division of assets as outlined in our initial filing. Given the circumstances of the marriage's dissolution and Mrs. Henley's clear misconduct, we believe this division is not only fair, but generous. Mrs. Henley lost her employment as a direct result of her husband's actions, Lawson interjected. Actions deliberately calculated to cause maximum damage to her career and financial stability. Judge Brewer raised an eyebrow. Are you suggesting, Ms. Lawson, that Mr. Henley should be penalized for reporting legitimate ethical violations to his wife's employer? Violations that, upon investigation, were found to be substantiated. We're suggesting that the timing and manner of his actions reveal a vindictive intent that this court should consider when evaluating his credibility and claims. I maintained my neutral expression, but inside I was smiling. Lawson was making exactly the argument Marcus had predicted and walking straight into the trap he'd set. Your Honor, Marcus said smoothly, my client reported factual information through appropriate channels. The consequences of those facts were determined by Mrs. Henley's employer based on their policies and standards. To suggest that Mr. Henley should have concealed evidence of workplace misconduct out of marital loyalty turns the concept of ethical behavior on its head. Judge Brewer nodded slightly. I tend to agree, Ms. Lawson. Your client's professional difficulties appear to be self-inflicted. Now, regarding the proposed asset division, the hearing continued for another 40 minutes, with Judge Brewer methodically addressing each contested item. Throughout, she seemed increasingly skeptical of Jenna's positions and increasingly aligned with mine. Finally, she set down her pen and addressed us both. Here's how we're going to proceed. I'm ordering a 60-day discovery period, during which both parties will provide complete financial disclosures and document production. However, based on the information already presented, I'm issuing temporary orders that largely align with the petitioner's requests. Jenna visibly paled as Judge Brewer continued. Mr. Henley will retain exclusive use of the marital home. Mrs. Henley will vacate if she hasn't already done so. Mr. Henley will maintain control of the investment accounts with the stipulation that no withdrawals exceeding $5,000 may be made without court approval. Mrs. Henley will retain her personal vehicle and checking account. Your Honor, Lawson began, my client has no place to live and limited resources due to her recent unemployment. These terms would create severe hardship. Perhaps your client should have considered the potential consequences before violating her employer's ethics policies with such enthusiasm, Judge Brewer replied coolly. However, I will order Mr. Henley to provide a one-time payment of $10,000 to Mrs. Henley for transitional expenses. This is not alimony or support, simply a recognition of immediate practical needs. It was less than I'd expected to pay and far less than Jenna had demanded. I glanced at Marcus, who gave me the slightest nod of satisfaction. We'll reconvene after the discovery period, Judge Brewer concluded. Court is adjourned. As we stood to leave, I finally looked directly at Jenna. The devastation on her face should have given me pleasure, but instead I felt only that same hollow emptiness. 19 years reduced to legal terminology and judicial orders. A life together ended in a sterile courtroom with strangers deciding who got what. Outside the courthouse, Marcus clapped me on the shoulder. That couldn't have gone better if we'd scripted. Brewer saw right through Lawson's victim narrative. What happens now? I asked, squinting in the bright August sunshine. Now we wait. Lawson will advise Jenna to settle. Fighting this would be throwing good money after bad, and Jenna must be running short on funds by now. And if she doesn't settle? Marcus smiled thinly. Then we bring out the rest of our evidence in discovery. The other affairs, the expense account irregularities, everything. But she won't let it get that far. She's many things, but stupid isn't one of them. He was right. 3 days later, Marcus called to tell me Lawson had reached out to discuss settlement terms. They're asking for a bit more cash and the vacation timeshare in the Outer Banks, but otherwise accepting our terms. I think we should agree. The timeshare is underwater anyway, and an extra $20,000 to make this go away quickly is a bargain. I agreed, and within a week the settlement was drafted, signed, and submitted to the court for approval. Just like that, my marriage was effectively over, pending only the final decree that would come after the mandatory waiting period. That evening, I sat on my back deck with a glass of bourbon, watching the sun set over my too-perfect garden. The roses needed pruning. I made a mental note to learn how to do that properly, one of many skills I'd neglected while focused on maintaining the facade of my marriage. My phone chimed with a text from Don. Heard through the grapevine that Travis got transferred to the Buffalo office. Effective immediately. Guess the golden boy isn't so golden anymore. I didn't respond. Travis had merely been a symptom, not the disease. Focusing my anger on him would be missing the point entirely. Another text, this one from Elaine. Mom's asking if you're coming to Sunday dinner. Says she made your favorite pie. I smiled slightly. Our mother's favorite pie rotation meant each of her children was always being offered their favorite whenever she thought they needed comfort. I texted back, tell her yes, and thanks. The next morning, I was working from home when the doorbell rang. Through the security camera, I saw Jenna standing on the porch. She wore jeans and a simple blouse, clothes I hadn't seen her in for years. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, her face free of makeup. She looked younger, almost like the woman I'd married 2 decades ago. I hesitated, then went to the door. What do you want, Jenna? I asked through the still closed door. 5 minutes, she replied, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. Please, against my better judgment, I opened the door but didn't invite her in. 5 minutes, I agreed. She looked past me into the house, our house, now my house, with naked longing. Everything's signed, she said. Oh, it's done. I know, Marcus told me. She wrapped her arms around herself. I needed to know if this is really what you want, if there's any chance at all that we could try again. I've lost everything else, Mark. My job, my reputation, my dignity. I can't lose you too. You lost me a long time ago, I said quietly. You just didn't notice. I made a terrible mistake, the worst mistake of my life, but 19 years has to count for something, doesn't it? All that history, all those memories. It counted for something, I acknowledged. It counted enough that when I found out about Travis, I didn't confront you immediately. I didn't cause a scene. I gave you a dignified exit with fair terms. Fair? You took everything. I took what was mine to begin with. The house in my name. The investments I built while you spent every dollar you earned. The life I maintained while you were busy building your career and sleeping with your colleague. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. That's not fair. My career benefited both of us. Did it? When was the last time we took a vacation together? When was the last time you were home for dinner more than twice in a week? When was the last time you asked me about my day and actually listened to the answer? She had no response to that, and we both knew why. Those things hadn't happened in years. Your 5 minutes are up, I said, starting to close the door. Wait, she said desperately. What if we went to counseling? What if I changed jobs, found something with normal hours? What if we started over? For a brief moment, I allowed myself to imagine it. Jenna, humbled by her mistakes, genuinely trying to rebuild our relationship. The two of us in a therapist's office, unpacking 19 years of accumulated resentments and misunderstandings, starting over with movie nights and home-cooked meals and actual conversations. It was a pleasant fantasy, but that's all it was. No, I said simply, some things can't be fixed once they're broken. This is one of them. Please, Mark, I love you. I've always loved you, even during the worst of it. If that's true, then I feel sorry for you, I replied, because that's a terrible kind of love, the kind that destroys what it claims to cherish. What can I do? She whispered, tears streaming down her face now. Tell me what I can do to make this right. Nothing. There's nothing you can do except that it's over and move on with your life. I paused, then added, I hope you find whatever it is you've been looking for, Jenna. I really do. But you won't find it here. Not anymore. I closed the door gently but firmly, then stood there listening to her quiet sobs on the other side. After a minute or two, I heard her footsteps retreating, followed by the sound of her car starting and driving away. I walked to the kitchen and found myself staring at the space where the beige folder had sat, the folder that had contained the beginning of the end. Now, somewhere in the court system, similar papers were processing the official conclusion. My phone rang. Marcus. Just checking in, he said when I answered. Lawson mentioned Jenna might try to contact you directly. Has she? She just left, I replied. She wanted to talk about reconciliation. Marcus sighed. I was afraid of that. What did you tell her? I told her no. Good, clean breaks heal faster. For both parties. After we hung up, I went to my home office and opened my laptop. I had work to do, deadlines to meet, life to continue living. But first I opened a blank document and began to type. Lessons from the End of a Marriage, I titled it. I wasn't sure why I was writing this or who would ever read it. Maybe no one. Maybe just me. Years from now, when the rawness had faded and I could look back with clearer eyes. But the words came easily, flowing from some deep place I'd kept sealed off for too long. I wrote about red flags I'd ignored, about compromises that had slowly eroded my sense of self, about the gradual normalization of loneliness within a marriage, about the subtle difference between being alone and being lonely. And as I wrote, I felt something shift inside me. Not healing exactly, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of the process. The hollow feeling was still there, but now it felt less like emptiness and more like space. Space for something new to eventually grow. When I finished writing, the sun was setting again. I saved the document, closed my laptop, and went to the kitchen to figure out dinner. As I rummaged through the refrigerator, I realized I could make whatever I wanted. Jenna had hated spicy food, so I'd stopped cooking with chilies years ago. She'd been watching her carbs, so pasta had disappeared from our meals. Tonight, I decided I would make the spiciest pasta arrabbiata possible, and I'd eat it at the coffee table while watching an action movie at full volume if I felt like it. It was a small rebellion, almost childish. But as I chopped garlic and crushed red pepper flakes, I felt a smile spread across my face. The first genuine smile in longer than I could remember. The final divorce decree arrived on a Tuesday in October, nearly 3 months after that Saturday morning when I'd seen Jenna's Facebook post. Marcus had it messengered to my office along with a bottle of 18-year-old scotch. Congratulations, the accompanying note read. The official end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Drink this slowly and with purpose. Marcus. I brought both home that evening and set them on the kitchen counter. The decree was just a piece of paper with official language and signatures, but it felt weightier somehow, as if the ink contained all the years and tears and whispered promises that had made up my marriage. I opened the scotch and poured 2 fingers into a crystal tumbler. One of our wedding gifts, ironically. Then I carried both the glass and the decree out to the back deck. The October evening was cool but not cold, the sky clear and filling with stars as the last light faded. I sat in one of the Adirondack chairs Elaine had helped me pick out when I decided to redecorate the deck. Another small act of reclamation. I sipped the scotch, feeling its warmth spread through me, and looked at the decree one last time before folding it and placing it beside me. It was done. Truly, finally done. My phone buzzed with a text from Elaine. Decree day, right? You okay? I typed back, I'm okay, having a drink on the deck. Stars are out. Want company? I considered it for a moment, then replied, not tonight, but thanks for always asking. Always will. Love you, little brother. Love you too. I set the phone down and leaned back to look at the stars. The silence wrapped around me like a blanket, not the strained, resentful silence that had filled my house during the last years of my marriage, but a peaceful quiet that felt like possibility. Tomorrow, I would wake up and go to work. I would talk to colleagues and clients, solve problems, earn my living. I would come home to an empty house that was gradually becoming a home again. I would cook dinner for myself, maybe call my mother, or text Elaine, ordinary things in an ordinary life. But tonight I would sit with this moment of ending and beginning. I would acknowledge what had been lost and what had been found. I would taste expensive scotch and count stars and feel the October air on my face. And I would remember that silence isn't emptiness, it's freedom.